Mothers who leave their children may predispose them. Good afternoon, friends. I hope your day is going well. In this video, I'm going to tell you for the first time why separation from one's mother in early childhood may produce a more submissive person later in life. But before I do, please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, like the video, and comment on the video for the sake of the algorithm. Now let's get started. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you guys to how I started developing my thoughts on this process. I've long noticed, both through experiences among my own family members, as well as in reading history, that men who grow up without a father present often develop a dominant personality. A personality that is self-assertive, confident, and so on. Whereas men who grow up without a mother, on the other hand, don't seem to develop the same kind of dominant, strong personality type. Now, I've long thought that this happens either due to one of two factors. Either the absence of the mother or the increased relative presence of a father in a child's life. The increased relative presence of a father, which happens when the mother's not there, may make the personality slightly more submissive by having more of a domineering personality around the person. Whereas growing up with a mother and not a father increases the relative proportion of being raised by feminine personalities, which may give, for example, sons better of an opportunity to do things maybe without being criticized or so on, developing more of a gregarious, confident kind of social personality. But these were just my thoughts. Recently, by accident, I came across a fascinating rodent study which appears to confirm the potential mechanisms behind what I've observed in my own and others' lives. In this video, I'm going to tell you about that study and what its implications may be. First of all, we have to introduce the maternal separation model in rodents. The maternal separation model is a model that's frequently used in rodent studies, but the reason why it's used is not actually to study the effect of separation from one's mother, but rather it's frequently used as a proxy for what's called early life stress. Early life stress can embody many different behavioral patterns. For example, families that have poor economic situations, or families that are racially discriminated against, or children who grow up without a certain parent available in their early childhood. Early life stress is studied so much in humans because academics want to understand why this certain kind of developmental effect has such a seemingly disproportionate effect on how we develop as adults. And this particular model, the maternal separation model, is a reliable, consistent model to induce early life stress in rodents. So it in particular is studied a lot as well. Now in this video, we're not going to be studying early life stress. We're going to be studying the effects of maternal separation in rodents. And by the way, a side note for people that have issues with rodent studies, I want you guys to know that I know a little bit about both mice and rats. I don't read these studies randomly. In fact, I often prefer them to other mammal species studies because I know these species quite a bit better. And not only the species, but the particular rodent strains that are used. Academics use rodents for a variety of reasons, but one of which is that we understand them very well, and we understand some translational aspects to understanding the implications of their research for humans. And oftentimes the rodent studies will be replicated in apes later on before they're evidenced in humans. But I just wanted you guys to know that I'm not randomly assuming that rodent studies apply to humans. I have certain translational aspects always in mind myself, and you guys will start to understand rodents better the more we talk about them. They're a very useful model. Now, before we talk about the fascinating paper, let's talk about the consistent effects of early maternal separation in rodents. There are certain developmental effects which are very consistent. First of all, maternal separation causes an overactivity of the sympathetic nervous system. That's a fight or flight state in our nervous system, which becomes more predominant when rodents are separated from their mothers early in life. This is coupled with overactivity of the HPA axis, that's your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, involved in stress hormone production in the body. This seems to consistently cause a dysregulation in some neurotransmitter systems, which are hormones that are in your nervous system, neurotransmitters. They transmit between neurons. Particularly the serotonin system, the GABA systems, the dopamine systems, and the noradrenaline systems often seem to be dysregulated, with potentially resulting effects on brain growth factors, which may not be resulting, but may be affected by serotonin dysregulation. In particular, particular a consistent underactivity of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, one of the key growth factors involved in our brain's development, is found among these children and the rodents. Maternal separation also has consistent structural effects on the brains of both humans and rodents. In particular, the brains of humans that have been separated from their mothers early in life have exaggerated hypertrophied amygdalas. The amygdala is an ancient part of your brain involved in governing fight or flight responses, which you would think could become overactivated in early childhood during stressful circumstances. Indeed, it actually grows in these people and also becomes disconnected from inhibition from other parts of the brain, such that people who have been separated from their mothers early in life have amygdalas that are overactive and not responsive to their brains trying to stop their fight or flight control of the brain. They also have hypo-functioning frontal cortexes and unusually small hippocampuses, one of the memory centers of the brain. In fact, this unusually small hippocampus is theorized to be due to an underactivity of growth factors in the brain during development. And in fact, interestingly, these people often have highly anxious phenotypes, maybe governed by the amygdala, and they also have poor memory, both in people and in rodents, unusually poor memory, maybe due to the smaller hippocampuses, which literally cannot store the amount of information that they need to. And rodents who are separated from their mothers have predispositions toward anxiety that is slightly differential across mice and rats, but similarly directional. So across mammals studied, in general, anxiety increases, both in the mothers and the children actually. And these rodents develop a predisposition towards depression later in life, as well as anhedonia, particularly, for example, from social defeat. They're more sensitive to poor social circumstances and become more anhedonic, meaning they can't feel pleasure when it happens. And rodents separated from their mothers early in life also develop different responses to drugs later in life. So for example, they respond to amphetamines better than other rodents in the sense that they're more attracted to using amphetamines, and they respond to alcohol in a potent manner that causes, it seems to be, increased dependence on ethanol even in early life. And the reason appears to be, academics speculate, because of a need of relief due to reduced inhibitory neurotransmitter signaling in these rodents, reduced GABAergic function and serotonergic function in particular. Note that these effects can be attenuated with concurrent, meaning at the same time as the child's experiencing this damage, SSRI treatment, although the SSRI treatment doesn't completely attenuate the effects of maternal separation. Finally, this takes us to our 2019 study on maternal separation. What this study investigated was whether the rodents who were separated from their mothers early in life developed more of a submissive personality in their hierarchical social order later in life. They found that they did. That maternal separation seemed to cause increased submissiveness later in life, and this submissiveness seemed to be modulated by the increased anxiety and depression that these rodents experienced. Now, although this was the first paper that investigated and discovered that there were alterations to the dominant submissive phenotype of rodents after maternal separation, they didn't really investigate the mechanisms very well, in my opinion. In particular, I would have wanted to know whether the acute effects of the distress of being away from the mother in early childhood produced sort of an anxious, depressed phenotype acutely, which then over time built a submissive personality, or whether the submissive personality was built by an altered gender ratio in their care, such that the rodents that didn't have mothers present as much maybe were exposed to males, adult male rodents more often, and in turn that could have caused them to become submissive maybe by being more around dominant personalities during their early childhood. These mechanisms were not investigated at all in this paper, and it leaves a lot of room for future research, I think. But it's excellent to finally have some evidence in rodents in a basic model indicating that mothers who leave their children may predispose them, particularly boys, to submissive behavior later in life. And this may in some way explain the reverse, in that mothers who are very present in the early childhoods of their children may offer them some enhanced confidence early in life that then produces this kind of dominant effect. So this paper, in my opinion, left a lot of room for improvement in determining the mechanisms, but at least it elucidated to us for the first time clearly that separation from one's mother in early life, at least as a rodent, can induce a submissive submissive behavioral phenotype later in life. And since this is in line with my own experiences, I think it really may hold in humans. It remains to be seen whether the long-term cumulative effect of being anxious in childhood directly produces submissiveness later in life, or maybe that's modulated by the differential exposure to genders in early childhood and therefore older dominant phenotypes. Anyway, friends, what are the takeaways we can make from this? Well, first of all, if you are unusually prone to stress, develop anxiety, depression, or anhedonia very easily, and have a particularly bad natural memory, where, for example, you don't remember where you were at last Tuesday for dinner, you may be somebody that experienced very severe childhood stress. It's actually quite common in humans and develops a similar phenotype across them. And the second takeaway I think we can make here is that a mother's availability during a child's early life is very important. Note that some of these rodent studies investigate as little separation as 15 minutes during the day to as long as 6 hours. That's enough to induce this phenotype after chronic stimulus. And this means that even short absences of a mother in a child's life can cause permanent, serious difficulties in that child's experience, changing physically their brains and behaviorally their actions. Anyway, friends, I hope you found this interesting. I certainly did, because I experienced this early in life. I was taken away from my mother when I was at the age of 2 or so, and I always wondered how a different life would have made me different as an adult. I see now that I may have a glimpse toward that, and I was likely right in my suspicions. Anyway, friends, I hope to see you again tomorrow morning.